Istanbul does not sleep. It only turns the pillow. The docks breathe tar and salt. Gulls fold the sky like letters. I hold my father's tools in one hand and a thin reed pen in the other. And I understand. A man can be cut by the life he keeps, or by the life he refuses. In the palace courtyards, pages practice bows the way sailors practice knots. In the neighborhood alleys, women trade recipes the way merchants trade routes. I have a little of each world and belong to none, so I make a promise that is both prayer and plan. I will leave kindly, and I will return changed. If I fail, let the paper keep walking without me. If I succeed, let the paper carry others when my feet grow old. My first mentor on the road is not a scholar but a boatman, he says. A river has two banks, the one you see and the one you think about. I practice seeing both. I learn to fold maps so they open to where I need to go. I learn to listen for prices that are really wishes and wishes that are really fears. An old woman in Galata tightens the strap on my satchel and warns, "Stories eat faster than men. Feed them carefully." I count coin for bread, then spend silence on the baker's grief his son drafted. His daughter promised too young. These are the currencies that buy the road. When I finally step past the last familiar stall, the city pulls at my sleeve like a child not ready to let go. I turn once. So the city can keep my face the way mothers keep first shoes. Unnecessary. Priceless. Bursa smells like new cloth and old ambition. Silk merchants touch fabric the way doctors touch a wrist, diagnosing with fingertips. Wait. Weave future. A man in a green cap brags that his bolts shine brighter than water at noon. His rival claims the dye remembers the sun even at night. I buy nothing. I buy everyone's mood. In a side street, a weaver sinks to his loom. If I stop singing, he explains, the pattern forgets what it was meant to be. The joke is gentle, the truth not. Whole neighborhoods live this way. Keep a tune going or the day unravels. Edirne teaches me bridges. Stone does not argue with a river. It studies it. I watch boys race crumbs on the current, betting which eddy is a friend. The coppersmith shows me a dented bowl and says, "It rings truer after trouble." He means himself. Skopje, Sarajevo, most are corners of the same prayer rug. In one courtyard, I hear a priest and an imam argue softly about rain. Is it answered because of fasting or generosity? A Roma fiddler shrugs. Rain comes for dancing. He plays, and for a moment everyone is correct. I note down the measure of the tune, so I can hum the memory later when borders pretend to be walls. A child offers me a cherry, waits for me to bite, then laughs when it bursts. "See," she says, "the inside is louder than the outside." Cities are like that. We travel their streets and think we know them. Then something breaks on the tongue, and the flavor refuses to be quiet. The Balkan Inn is a university disguised as smoke. A monk's bread is dark and honest, and a mom's tea is sweet and forgiving. The innkeeper carries both across the same floorboards, proof that hospitality is older than doctrine. At the hearth, a soldier removes his boots with the care of a man disarming a memory. He asks if I am loyal. I say I am loyal to whoever is hungry. I can be bought for a bowl of soup and betrayed by a better one. He laughs, and we are safe until the bowl is empty. I learn the art of sitting between worlds without stealing from either. My notebook is not a net. It is a mirror tilted toward the most human angle I can find. When departure calls, the monk presses a crust into my palm. The imam fills a small tin with tea leaves. The innkeeper winks. Come back when you know more or less. Palaces are polite storms. Courtiers move like chess pieces whose rules keep changing. A poet whispers that truth is best told as rumor. A treasurer whispers that rumor is best told as numbers. I present my cities as gifts wrapped in sentences. The Sultan does not unwrap them. He listens for what rustles. He asks about taxes, and I answer with bridges. He asks about rebellions, and I answer with bread. He is not fooled, but he smiles. Storyteller, he says, is a diplomat allowed to be beautiful? I learn when to bow with my head and when to bow with my tongue. I learn that a well-timed laugh can buy more mercy than a coin. When I overstepped, I do the palace corrects me with velvet gloves that hide iron rings. At night, I practice being smaller than my shadow. In the morning, I grow just large enough to carry the next commission. If I am a jester, it is not because I juggle truths. It is because I make sure nothing important hits the floor. Anatolia teaches through the mouth. The Armenian baker slaps dough against the oven wall. It clings like a pilgrim to a shrine, then falls into readiness. He gives me the burnt edge, the best piece. Kurdish shepherd names his flock the way sailors name stars. He can count them by sound and fog. The Greek widow explains that bread is stored upside down, so hunger cannot steal it with its eyes. I record recipes the way I record roads. Stew begins with onions the way a journey begins with pride. Both must be softened before anything good can happen. I practice a few village words and watch faces open like windows on the first cool night of summer. Grammar is a door, accent is the key. Kindness is the hand that turns it. The Danube writes its own fog. The mist, shapes arrive before their names. A knife dance sparks near the watchfire footwork to confuse the bad luck that searches by rhythm. The captain of the wooden fort claims he can smell snow 3 days ahead. He smells war the same way, and is wrong as often. Inside the palisade, men eat from the same pot without agreeing about anything else. One prays facing east, another prays facing his child's cradle, far away. The most devout man here is the one who sharpens everyone's skates, so the river does not claim ankles in payment. When the fog lifts, the far bank appears like a rumor proven. My notes are wet at the edges, the ink a little frantic. I redraw lines the way the river does, impatient with certainties, generous with curves. The knife dancer nods at my pen and says, "Your blade is quiet. Dangerous." I take it as a compliment and a warning. The desert refuses punctuation. Sentences go on until the wind takes pity. A caravan leader reads the stars with a farmer's patience. Weeds of light here, good soil there. We time our rest by verses, our hope by wells we have not yet seen. I learn the taste of shade and the cost of haste. A young camel driver teaches me the small prayer for lost objects. We use it for waterskins, tempers, sometimes for courage that wanders off when the noon glare interrogates it. At night, the sky descends until it rests on the bones of the dunes. I feel smaller than a date pit and more necessary than salt. The desert does not ask who you are. It asks if you will share what you carry. In the morning, we divide figs and regrets. Both are sweeter in half. Cairo is loud with learning. In a scriptorium, the calligrapher's hand floats like a heron over a pond. When it lands, black water ripples into letters. Debate spills from study halls into alleys. Metaphors elbow anecdotes for room. Two scholars argue whether a parable should be short enough to memorize or long enough to change a mind while it is being told. The bookseller grins and sells me both. In the market of instruments, I hear mathematicians testing astrolabes against the sun like cooks tasting soup. On a bridge, a boy recites lines about patience to a girl who pretends not to listen. The city is a university without walls. Tuition is attention. I spend all I have and go into debt gladly. At night by lamp, I copy notes until the margin can hold no more. A gray-bearded teacher leans over and taps the last line. "Make room for error," he says. "It travels faster than you do." In the fish market at dawn, a woman salts mullet with the economy of a general. She sees my pen and says, "Write this. The sea pays on its own schedule." I write it twice, once for fish, once for fate. The slave market is a chord my throat cannot sing. Prices are announced with pride, families divided with routine. A girl bites her lip and refuses to cry. A man drops his eyes so mercy can find him without embarrassment. I stand apart and fail at standing apart. My pen feels like a bribe offered to my own conscience. I write what I can without pretending that ink is rescue. That night, I give away the day's coins to a widow who counts them like apologies. It is not justice. It is not enough. It is a start small enough to carry. Between mosque and church, time keeps 2 calendars and 1 heartbeat. Bells slice the air. The adhan pours over it like water over metal. I close my eyes. The sounds do not fight. They braid. A priest tells me that incense is a ladder. A muezzin tells me that voice is a bridge. I tell them both that bread is a treaty. Share a loaf and prove the point. On the way out, a child asks, which God is louder, say the one that teaches you to listen. Bandits arrive like bad edits. Sudden, clumsy, persuasive. I try a trick I learned from a shepherd. Tell a story that is really a mirror. The treasure you want is cursed, I begin, but the curse is picky. It chooses the greediest hand. The leader laughs and proves he is brave by pretending he is not superstitious. They take my purse and leave my pages. When they vanish into the scrub, I feel both robbed and pay-emptied of coin, rich with relief. Later, by a safer fire, a merchant says I should hire guards. I tell him I already have the cheapest kind. Jokes and detours. He shakes his head. Those will not stop arrows. No, I say, but they sometimes redirect them. If maps are for getting somewhere, kitchens are for arriving. A Tatar stew smells like the decision to stay one more night. A Bosnian coffee is patience boiled down to a sip. In a Greek cottage, I learned to salt fish the way a widow salts tears, thoroughly, respectfully, with an eye toward tomorrow. The lesson repeats across provinces. People who cannot agree on rulers can agree on onions. At an inn near a border that changes names more often than a stray cat changes homes, strangers slide benches together because the table is too small. The conversation begins with where the pepper came from and ends with who we hope our sons will become. A song enters the room through the door. The wind forgot to close. Someone sets the rhythm by knocking the table's underside with a spoon. Even the quiet men hum. Even the careful women smile without permission. I sketch the breads, flat where the land is flat, leavened where the valley traps warm air. I sketch the knives, curved for melons, straight for debt. I sketch the pots, wide for guests, narrow for secrets. I realize I am building a second book inside the first, a cookbook for travelers who measure safety by the warmth of a ladle. A boy asks me if I can teach him to write his name. I trade the lesson for a recipe for the soup his grandmother swears by when fevers come. He prints the letters like fence posts, uneven but stubborn. I copy the soup with reverence. Onion, garlic, thyme if the garden is friendly, vinegar if the ghost will not leave. We are both satisfied. When the road rises again and the miles behave like taxes, I think about that table. I think about how a nation might be nothing more than the distance between two bowls and the willingness to pass bread across it. I walk lighter for the thought, as if I have been given permission to belong wherever a pot is already singing. Home measures me without accusation. The alleys remember my shoes, but forgive my new pace. Friends test my voice to hear what has changed in it. They nod at the places where it breaks and does not apologize. I carry no trophies, except names. I place them on the table with fruit. We eat both. The city has not grown. I have, but only in the directions I fed. When I sleep, the house holds me like a book closed on a finger ready to open again without losing the place. Pages breed when no one is looking. The manuscript swells into something with weather of its own. A poet friend reads passages aloud and says the sentences walk like we do when we are late but unwilling to look frantic. I take it as praise and edit anyway. A young scribe complains that my lines curve too much. He prefers roads that go straight to the point. I tell him straight roads are good for armies, curves for neighbors. He rolls his eyes and improves my punctuation. I struggle most with the parts where I was wrong. Times I judged too quickly. Times I hid behind cleverness. Times my comfort cost someone else's. I keep them in. I want a reader to recognize my mistakes before they become his. Truth is a market square with many stalls. I've tried to buy widely and pay fairly. When I cannot, I say so.
Ow.
When the binding is finely sewn, I run my palm over the leather the way a farmer checks a mule's flank. Carry well, I whisper. The book does not answer, but it does not flinch. If you cannot go, send your attention. Travels without papers and does not mind borders. Ask your grocer which fruit tastes like a memory. Ask your bus driver which street forgives bad days. Ask your neighbor how her mother boiled beans and why she waited for the water to start talking.
Right.
The answer's where you will trip over them later. When you do leave next town or next life, take less than you think you need and more than you can repay. Return neither empty-handed nor full of yourself. Travel if you can, not to be far, but to be near differently.